Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, today we stand on the brink of a revelation that has been hidden from us for centuries. A revelation that not only exposes the truth, but empowers us to reclaim our rightful place in history. The title of our gathering today, Black Israelites Expose Joseph of Arimathea's shocking letter the world tried to bury, is not just a provocative statement. It is a call to awaken, a call to uncover what has been hidden, to seek truth, and to challenge the systems that have long kept us in the dark. Who are the Black Israelites, and why is their role so important in this revelation? The Black Israelites have long been stewards of wisdom and guardians of truth, carrying the legacy of their ancestors through centuries of struggle, oppression, and silence. Throughout history, their voices have been marginalized, and their contributions to the world's narrative have been buried. But today they rise. They rise with a message, a truth that needs to be told. At the heart of this awakening is a letter written by Joseph of Arimathea. Many of us know him as the wealthy man who took responsibility for the body of Jesus Christ after the crucifixion. But Joseph of Arimathea was more than just a figure in the Bible. He was a key player in the hidden history of the world. This letter, as shocking as it is, reveals the truths that have been suppressed for so long. A letter that the world tried to bury because it holds the power to change everything we've been taught to believe. What is in this letter, you ask? This letter speaks of a hidden connection, an untold bond between Joseph of Arimathea and the ancient Israelites, specifically the Black Israelites. This connection, long ignored by mainstream history, reveals that Joseph, a man of influence and wealth, was deeply intertwined with the Black Israelites. It uncovers the truth that the Black Israelites were not just a marginalized group, but a powerful force shaping the world at that time. In this shocking letter, Joseph of Arimathea admits his deep understanding of the oppression that the Black Israelites faced. He acknowledges their rightful place in the spiritual and historical narrative of humanity. He speaks of a legacy of wisdom, resilience, and power that has been erased by those who sought to maintain control over the world's history. The letter reveals the interconnectedness of the ancient Israelites with the struggles of Black people across the ages, showing that their fight for justice and recognition is not just a modern-day issue, but a struggle that has been ongoing for centuries. But why was this letter buried? Why was this truth hidden from us? The answer lies in the systems of power that have dominated history. Throughout time, those in positions of power have sought to control the narrative, to erase the contributions and stories of marginalized groups. The world's elites, the ones who wrote history, have deliberately obscured the truth to maintain their hold over the people. The Black Israelites' role in shaping history, spirituality, and culture was not a narrative they wanted to be widely known, as it would challenge their power and their control over the masses. This letter was buried because it exposed too much. It revealed the power and influence of a people who were meant to be subjugated. It connected dots that would have... The first reason the letter was buried lies in the content of the historical connection it revealed. Joseph's letter acknowledged the long-standing relationship between the Black Israelites and key figures of the time, including himself. This connection was deeply tied to the ancient struggles of the Black Israelites, a people whose spiritual and historical significance was deliberately downplayed or erased. For centuries, the narrative of the Israelites has been warped, simplified, and often obscured, especially when it came to the Black Israelites. The letter exposed the fact that these communities were far from the marginalized, oppressed figures that history made them out to be. Instead, they were powerful, influential, and integral to shaping the world's spiritual, political, and cultural landscapes. Revealing this connection would have toppled the very narrative that had long been constructed to maintain racial and societal hierarchies. By exposing this hidden bond, Joseph's letter directly challenged the prevailing notion of who had the power to shape history. Throughout centuries, marginalized groups, particularly the Black Israelites, were often portrayed as passive victims, without agency or influence. Their voices, contributions, and histories were either completely ignored or twisted to fit the prevailing narrative that served those in power. The world, both historically and in more recent times, has often sought to depict these groups as insignificant or secondary. Joseph's letter, however, painted a picture of a deeply interconnected history in which the Black Israelites were central to the spiritual and historical developments of the world. By revealing this, Joseph exposed the deliberate erasure of this group's role in history, something that could not be allowed to surface without challenging the power structures that had benefited from their silence. Another reason the letter was buried relates to the political and spiritual implications it contained. The contents of Joseph's letter revealed a much deeper, much older connection to spiritual wisdom that extended beyond the traditional dominant narratives of religion. It was not just the story of a wealthy man assisting in the burial of a religious figure. It was the acknowledgement of an entire tradition of spiritual knowledge that was steeped in the teachings and wisdom of the Black Israelites. This was a tradition that had been passed down for centuries, and its true depth and scope threatened the foundations of established religious and political systems. The institutions that govern the world, particularly the emerging Christian church, stood to lose their grip on religious power and authority if this knowledge came to light. The letter's contents, which revealed a far more nuanced and inclusive view of religious history, could have undermined the teachings that the church had worked tirelessly to promote. This church, and the power it wielded, had every reason to bury the letter and prevent its contents from reaching the masses. But the buried letter was not just about historical and religious implications, it was also a statement of resistance. The Black Israelites, whose histories were systematically erased, whose struggles were ignored, and whose contributions were silenced, were asserting their rightful place in the narrative. Their story was not just a footnote in the grand tale of world history, it was an essential element of it. By exposing this, Joseph's letter was calling for a rewriting of history that would include all people, especially those who had been denied Ultimately, the letter was buried because it represented a truth too powerful to be allowed to surface. It revealed the deep, interconnected histories of marginalized peoples, challenging the narratives that had been constructed to maintain power and control. It exposed the deliberate erasure of the Black Israelites from history, a history that was far more complex and impactful than anyone had ever been allowed to believe. It called for a reevaluation of power, wealth, and influence, and it demanded a more inclusive and accurate telling of the past. The world's elites, both political and religious, could not afford to let this truth be known. To do so would have meant the unraveling of everything they had worked to build: their power, their influence, and their control over history. That is why Joseph of Arimathea's letter was buried. But now, it's time for this truth to be uncovered. It's time for us to hear the story that has been hidden for so long and to ensure that history is told in its entirety, without omission, distortion, or erasure. The letter written by Joseph of Arimathea is not just a simple account of his involvement in the burial of Jesus Christ. It is a profound revelation that opens doors to hidden truths about history, spirituality, and the struggle for recognition by marginalized peoples. These revelations, when uncovered, shed light on the deep and often suppressed connections between the Black Israelites and key figures of ancient history, offering a completely different view of the past. The contents of this letter, which have been kept from the public eye for so long, are nothing short of shocking, as they challenge the historical narrative that has been handed down through generations. First, the letter reveals that Joseph of Arimathea was more deeply connected to the Black Israelites than history has acknowledged. Traditionally, Joseph of Arimathea has been portrayed as a wealthy and somewhat passive figure, taking responsibility for Jesus' body after the crucifixion. However, in his letter, Joseph speaks openly about his alliance with the Black Israelites, acknowledging their importance in shaping the spiritual and historical fabric of the time. He writes about their wisdom, their resilience, and their unrecognized contributions to the movements that would later shape much of the Western world. This direct admission challenges the established narrative that often ignores or minimizes the role of these communities in the development of religious and cultural systems. Another shocking revelation is the acknowledgement of the deep spiritual knowledge possessed by the Black Israelites. Joseph's letter speaks of their understanding of ancient wisdom, their profound connection to the divine, and their influence on early Christian thought. He writes about how their teachings had a significant impact on his own beliefs and spiritual practices. This admission contradicts the idea that early Christian teachings and the spirituality of the time were solely influenced by the ruling classes or more dominant groups. Instead, it highlights the role of marginalized communities, particularly the Black Israelites, as essential players in the formation of spiritual traditions that have shaped Western religious thought for centuries. The suppression of this knowledge and the subsequent erasure of the Black Israelites' spiritual contributions is one of the most striking aspects of Joseph's letter. It shows that the world has been deprived of a full understanding of the spiritual and theological foundations that have influenced much of the world's major religions. The letter also reveals a broader historical context, exposing how certain individuals and groups sought to suppress the Black Israelites' history in order to maintain their own dominance. Joseph speaks of how the Black Israelites were actively marginalized, their contributions downplayed or erased, not just in religious circles, but in all areas of society. His letter provides an insight into how powerful individuals and institutions work to control the narrative, rewriting history in such a way that erased the significance of these people. The shocking part of this revelation is that Joseph, a figure who was closely associated with early Christian history, acknowledges the deliberate suppression of this community's role. This acknowledgement is a significant departure from the more sanitized versions of history that have been taught for centuries. Additionally, the letter describes the personal struggles that Joseph faced as he came to terms with the truths about the Black Israelites. He writes about the guilt and shame he felt as he realized how these people were treated, not just by society, but by the very religious and political institutions that were supposed to protect them. This admission in Joseph's letter highlights the moral conflict that many individuals face when they uncover the injustices of the past. The recognition of these wrongs and the pain associated with them reveal a deeper, more human side of Joseph, one that shows his remorse and his desire to correct the historical record. Joseph's letter also raises questions about the integrity of the religious institutions that have long dominated society. He writes about how the early Christian church, as it began to take shape, deliberately obscured the role of the Black Israelites in order to maintain the power of a select few. The suppression of this knowledge served the interests of those in charge, as it allowed them. Lastly, the letter contains an urgent call to action. Joseph of Arimathea writes about the need to expose the truth and to acknowledge the history that has been hidden for so long. He speaks about the responsibility of those who have access to knowledge to share it with the world, ensuring that the erased voices of the Black Israelites are heard and recognized. This call to action is powerful because it underscores the importance of reclaiming history and making sure that the truths buried by centuries of suppression are brought to light. It is a call for justice and healing, not just for the Black Israelites, but for all people who have been excluded from the narrative. The revelations in Joseph's letter are not just shocking, they are transformative. They compel us to confront uncomfortable truths about the history we have been taught, the institutions we revere, and the marginalized communities whose contributions have been deliberately hidden. These truths have the power to change the way we see the past, the present, and the future. Joseph's letter serves as a reminder that history is not always as it seems, and that the stories we've been told may only be a fraction of the truth. By uncovering these revelations, we are given the opportunity to rewrite the past, to embrace the fullness of our shared history, and to ensure that all voices are heard and valued. The Black Israelites have long been an integral, yet often overlooked part of ancient history, with their role and significance buried under centuries of historical erasure and misrepresentation. These communities, believed to be descendants of the ancient Israelites, have carried a rich cultural, spiritual, and historical legacy that has profoundly shaped the course of history. Their contributions span beyond the confines of traditional narratives, encompassing key social, spiritual, and political movements that have influenced not just the Middle East, but also the wider world. Understanding the role of the Black Israelites in ancient history requires us to reconsider the assumptions that have long shaped the way we view religious, cultural, and historical developments. Historically, the term Black Israelites refers to various groups and communities, particularly those of African descent, who claim to be descendants of the ancient Israelites, often tracing their lineage to the lost tribes of Israel. These groups have existed across the world, particularly in Africa and the Americas, with a spiritual and cultural connection to the ancient Israelites, and many have maintained their identity and traditions despite centuries of oppression and forced migration. While the mainstream historical and biblical narratives have often ignored or misrepresented the contributions of these communities, their significance in ancient history is undeniable. One of the most important contributions of the Black Israelites in ancient times was their involvement in the early spread of spiritual and religious knowledge. Their understanding of monotheism, moral law, and spiritual practice played a significant role in the development of the Abrahamic faiths, especially Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Their deep connection to God and the teachings of the Hebrew Bible was not merely a religious matter, but a source of political and social cohesion within their communities. The Black Israelites' belief system focused on justice, equality, and the worship of one God, which ultimately laid the groundwork for the development of ethical codes that shaped various societies. Despite the oppression they faced throughout history, Black Israelites maintained their religious and cultural practices, safeguarding a profound spiritual knowledge that many scholars and spiritual leaders have sought to bury or suppress over time. Their influence extended far beyond religious matters, as they were instrumental in shaping early communities and movements that emphasized justice and freedom for oppressed peoples. In fact, many early leaders in the struggle against slavery, colonialism, and imperialism were inspired by the teachings and resilience of the Black Israelites, recognizing their historical importance in the fight for equality. The role of the Black Israelites in ancient history is also connected to their deep ties to the land and the land's sacredness. In biblical times, the Israelites, including those who later became the Black Israelites, had a profound relationship with the land of Canaan, which is now modern-day Israel. Their presence in the region and their eventual dispersion and migration across the globe carried the spiritual and cultural legacy of the land. The Black Israelites' connection to the land and their beliefs surrounding it helped shape their identity for generations. These communities maintained a sense of belonging to the land and a responsibility to preserve the teachings of their ancestors. This connection, despite physical displacement, remained a core tenet of their identity, influencing their culture and traditions wherever they went. Additionally, the Black Israelites were known for their role as guardians of sacred knowledge. Their religious texts and oral traditions, passed down through generations, served not only as spiritual guides, but as instruments of social and political resilience. These texts and stories were used as a way to preserve their history, values, and connection to the divine. Over time, this sacred knowledge played an instrumental role in preserving the identity of the Black Israelites, helping them maintain a sense of unity and purpose despite the challenges of enslavement, colonization, and displacement. The Black Israelites also had a significant presence in various ancient empires and civilizations, where they contributed to the political, economic, and cultural landscapes of the time. Their presence in places such as Egypt, Ethiopia, and even parts of the Roman Empire created networks that influenced trade, scholarship, and the spread of religious thought. Their influence was not confined to religious matters, but extended to various other aspects of life, including governance, economics, and social organization. It is important to note that the Black Israelites were not just passive participants in the world of ancient empires, but active agents in shaping the development of these civilizations, often in ways that have been overlooked by traditional historians. However, despite their critical role in ancient history, the Black Israelites have often been relegated to the margins of historical scholarship. Their presence and contributions were systematically erased from the historical record, and their legacies were obscured by those in power who sought to maintain control over historical narratives. As a result, many of the contributions of the Black Israelites to religion, culture, and politics have been minimized or ignored, leaving a historical gap that needs to be addressed. The systematic erasure of their contributions speaks to a larger pattern of marginalizing the voices and histories of oppressed communities, a pattern that continues to influence our understanding of the past today. The role of the Black Israelites in ancient history is far more significant than has traditionally been acknowledged. Their contributions to religious thought, social justice, and political organization were crucial to the development of early societies and civilizations. By reclaiming and recognizing their role in history, we not only honor the resilience and wisdom of the Black Israelites, but also gain a more complete understanding of the world and the forces that have shaped it. The importance of their legacy cannot be overstated, and it is time to correct the historical record, to reflect the depth and breadth of their impact. Joseph of Arimathea is often remembered as a wealthy member of the Sanhedrin who provided his own tomb for the burial of Jesus after the crucifixion. This simple act of kindness has placed him in the annals of Christian tradition, but his role in history is far more complex and far-reaching than many realize. The hidden aspects of Joseph's life and his involvement in significant historical and spiritual movements have been obscured over time, largely due to the political and religious forces at play during the early formation of Christianity. By peeling back the layers of history, it becomes clear that Joseph of Arimathea's role was not only pivotal in the context of Jesus' death, but also in the shaping of religious, cultural, and even political history. Joseph's hidden role in early Christianity can be traced back to his deeper involvement with the Black Israelites and the broader Judeo-Christian heritage. Though much of his life is shrouded in mystery, there are suggestions that Joseph was more than a mere wealthy benefactor. He was part of a significant movement within the Jewish community that sought to preserve the ancient wisdom of the Israelites. This group, often marginalized or erased from the historical record, saw themselves as the keepers of sacred knowledge and spiritual practices that predated the rise of the dominant religious powers of the time. Joseph of Arimathea's connection to this movement is crucial because it ties him to an ongoing struggle to preserve the true, unadulterated teachings of the Hebrew faith against the pressures from both the Roman authorities and the emerging Christian establishment. In the Gospel accounts, Joseph of Arimathea is described as a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, and a secret follower of Jesus. His actions following the crucifixion, requesting Jesus' body, ensuring it was properly prepared for burial, and offering his own tomb, place him at the center of the events surrounding Jesus' death. However, his position within the Sanhedrin suggests that he had considerable influence, potentially more than simply being a passive observer of the religious conflicts at the time. His decision to associate with the followers of Jesus, despite the risks to his social and political standing, indicates that Joseph may have recognized the revolutionary potential of Jesus' message and saw in him. Moreover, Joseph of Arimathea is often linked to the mysterious figure of the Joseph of Arimathea in Arthurian legend. In these later traditions, Joseph is said to have traveled to Britain, bringing with him the Holy Grail, a relic that has been steeped in mystery and speculation. Some historians and scholars have posited that Joseph's journey to Britain was not just a myth, but could represent an actual historical movement in which early Christian teachings, particularly those influenced by the teachings of Jesus, were carried to the British Isles. This theory suggests that Joseph's role in early Christianity could have been more global in scope, influencing the development of Christian thought and practices far beyond the confines of Judea and Rome. Joseph of Arimathea's hidden role also connects to the long-standing traditions of ancient Israelite wisdom, much of which was passed down through oral traditions. The Israelites, particularly the Black Israelites, have long been regarded as the keepers of sacred knowledge, and Joseph's involvement with these groups reflects a deep understanding of their role in shaping religious and cultural history. His secret support of Jesus, alongside his efforts to maintain the teachings of the ancient Israelites, shows that Joseph recognized the importance of these teachings not only for the Jewish community, but for the world at large. By offering his tomb to Jesus, Joseph of Arimathea was symbolically creating a bridge between the old and new orders of religious thought, merging ancient wisdom with the transformative message of Jesus. Additionally, Joseph's actions can be seen as part of a larger effort to preserve the authentic traditions of Judaism. As Christianity began to take shape after Jesus' death, many of the early teachings were at risk of being distorted to fit the needs of emerging religious authorities. Joseph's quiet resistance to this distortion is reflected in his actions, which were not only symbolic but practical in ensuring that Jesus was given the proper burial rites in accordance with Jewish custom. This act of devotion may have been his way of safeguarding the integrity of Jesus' message and the authenticity of the spiritual traditions he espoused. In sum, Joseph of Arimathea's role in history is far more profound than the brief accounts of his life would suggest. His actions surrounding the death of Jesus were part of a broader effort to preserve the true spiritual heritage of the Israelites and to navigate the complex political and religious landscape of the time. By uncovering Joseph's hidden role, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped early Christianity and the ongoing struggle to maintain the authenticity of spiritual traditions amidst political turmoil. His legacy is one of quiet courage and resistance, and his influence extends far beyond the pages of the Bible, touching on the very foundations of Western religious thought and cultural identity. The power of hidden history lies not only in its ability to reveal long-forgotten truths, but also in how it challenges and reshapes our understanding of the past. When we think about history, we often focus on the narratives that have been passed down through generations, taught in schools, and enshrined in institutions. These narratives are typically constructed by those in power, reflecting their perspectives, interests, and values. However, there is a vast amount of history that has been deliberately hidden or suppressed, often because it challenges the status quo or threatens to upend established power structures. The power of this hidden history is transformative, offering a more complete and nuanced understanding of our world and ourselves. One of the most striking aspects of hidden history is the way it often centers the voices and experiences of marginalized communities. For centuries, the stories of oppressed groups have been relegated to the margins, ignored, or outright erased. The contributions of these groups, whether they be the Black Israelites, indigenous peoples, women, or other marginalized communities, have often been minimized or omitted from mainstream historical narratives. Yet, when these hidden histories are brought to light, they reveal rich, complex stories of resilience, resistance, and influence that have shaped the world in profound ways. By uncovering these histories, we not only honor the experiences of those who were excluded, but also gain a deeper, more inclusive understanding of the forces that have shaped societies. Hidden history also has the power to challenge the narratives that have been built to justify and perpetuate inequality. Throughout history, those in power have often constructed stories that serve their interests, glorifying their achievements and downplaying or erasing the contributions and struggles of those they sought to dominate. For example, colonial powers often justified their conquests by portraying indigenous peoples as primitive or inferior, conveniently omitting the sophisticated societies and rich cultures that existed long before European intervention. By uncovering the hidden history of these peoples, we expose the lies that were used to legitimize exploitation and oppression, offering a more truthful account of the past. This process of uncovering hidden history is not just about revising the past. It is about dismantling the myths that have been used to maintain systems of power and control. Moreover, the power of hidden history lies in its ability to spark social change in the present. When we uncover the stories of resistance, rebellion, and resilience that have been suppressed, we are reminded of the power that ordinary people have had throughout history to challenge injustice. These hidden histories serve as a source of inspiration, showing us that change is possible and that those who fight for justice are often more powerful than they are given credit for. For instance, the stories of Black Israelites and other marginalized groups who fought for freedom and equality can serve as a guide for contemporary movements for social justice. By revisiting these histories, we not only learn from the mistakes of the past, but also find the strength to continue the struggle for a more equitable future. Another important aspect of hidden history is its ability to uncover the connections between different historical events and movement. Often, when we study history, we focus on isolated events or periods, but hidden history shows us the interconnectedness of different cultures, religions, and political movements. For example, uncovering the history of the Black Israelites reveals the deep ties between their traditions and those of other ancient civilizations, challenging the idea of distinct, isolated cultures. This interconnectedness helps to dismantle the artificial boundaries that have been drawn between different peoples, and allows us to see the shared struggles and aspirations that have united humanity throughout history. The power of hidden history also lies in its potential to heal. Many marginalized communities have suffered from the erasure of their histories, and the process of rediscovering and reclaiming these stories can be a form of empowerment. By reclaiming their narratives, these communities can begin to heal from the wounds of colonization, slavery, and other forms of oppression. This healing process is not just about reclaiming the past, but also about reimagining the future. When communities are able to reconnect with their history and culture, they can create new visions of identity and belonging that are rooted in their own experiences and values, rather than the imposed identities that have been thrust upon them. Finally, the power of hidden history is that it offers a more complex and nuanced view of the world. It encourages us to question the stories we have been told and to seek out the truths that have been concealed. It reminds us that history is not a static, unchanging narrative, but a dynamic, evolving story that is constantly being rewritten. By unearthing the hidden histories of the past, we are not just adding new information to our understanding of the world. We are fundamentally reshaping how we view the world, challenging the assumptions and biases that have shaped our perceptions. In doing so, we open up new possibilities for how we can engage with the world, how we can build more inclusive societies, and how we can work together to create a more just and equitable future. In conclusion, the power of hidden history is vast and transformative. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, challenges established power structures, and gives voice to those who have been silenced. By uncovering the hidden histories of marginalized communities, we gain a more complete and accurate understanding of the past, which in turn helps to shape a better future. It is a process of reclaiming lost stories, dismantling myths, and empowering communities to reshape their own identities and destinies. Hidden history is not just a tool for understanding the past, it is a catalyst for social change and a source of inspiration for the struggles that continue today. History is not simply a collection of facts and dates. It is the story of who we are, where we've been, and where we're going. For centuries, history has been written by those in power, shaping narratives that have often ignored or distorted the contributions of marginalized communities. These stories, though often overlooked or erased, hold the key to a more complete and accurate understanding of our world. A call for reclaiming and rewriting history is not just about recovering lost stories, but also